here in San Diego, but a lot of exciting things that are happening. So I'm really excited about the conversation we're having today. We're here because of a partnership with Itron and because of our partnership with Cisco to really talk about the EnergyWater Nexus and what that really means and kind of what the future is, not only for us here in Southern California, but really throughout the country and throughout the world. So today's agenda, we'll start with a keynote by a fellow University of Texas alum, Dr. Michael Weber, who's joining us today from Austin, Texas. Don't hold that against him. It's a good place because that's where really good people come from, including me. That'll be followed by a panel of some leaders, not only here, but around the world, and some visionaries around the EnergyWater Nexus, representing both the public sector, the private sector, and our utilities as well, with our water and electric utilities as well. So, and then we'll close the day with some remarks by Congressman Scott Peters, our favorite congressman here in San Diego, who's done a lot to advance the innovation economy on behalf of San Diego and DC to the extent he can. But we're excited to have him today here as well. So I'm going to turn it over and introduce Dr. Weber. You received the bios of all of our speakers as part of your reminder to be here today. We don't print things out because that's not very sustainable to do. So hopefully you reviewed that, and I'm not going to read each bio for every speaker. But I will note about Dr. Weber, one of the things that I think is really exciting, and he'll talk a little bit about, is his focus on making sure our K through 12 students really understand what the convergence of energy and water is, its impact on them and its impact on our society, and the relationship between water and energy and what they should start thinking about and they should start doing at a young age to make sure we're conserving resources the way that we should. He's created an online portal that Itron is making available to students all around the world to help them understand what this industry really means for, again, our environment and our economy. He was actually at Francis Parker yesterday speaking to a number of students about the convergence of water and energy, and was also scheduled to speak to students down at High Tech High, but the flu got the better of some of the folks down at High Tech High, so he'll be doing a Skype presentation at some point in the future with High Tech High. So he'll talk a little bit about that program, I hope, and I hope you'll walk away, download that, share that with your students, share that with their classrooms. It's a really great visual tool and something I think is doing a remarkable job of changing the way that our students are thinking about these issues. So without saying anything further, let me introduce Dr. Michael Weber this morning to speak with you.
Good morning, thanks for having me. I was speaking with Philip Measy beforehand, the CEO of Itron, about whether today is a little bit like speaking to my graduate students in class. I was like, no, it's actually very different. You're on time, you're well dressed, you seem happy, and the quality of the food and coffee out there is much better. So this is a different kind of experience. I appreciate you having me. I want to talk about the EnergyWater Nexus, Thirst for Power, different things going on. I really appreciate Jason organizing this and all the sponsors and people that make this happen. And I'd like to talk and think and do research about energy water because I consider them the world's two most critical resources. I think of water as life. I think of energy as quality of life or wealth. And that's important. I'll give some examples about why they're important and how they're interconnected. And I'll start by saying that we use water to define our outlook on life. There's a classic cliche here with the glass, and an optimist might call it a glass half full. A pessimist might call it glass half empty. An engineer says the glass is the wrong size, which I think is kind of funny. The water planner says it doesn't matter how long your straw is if your glass is empty. My grad students say, I see you found my tears, which I think is so water defines what is life. And energy enables a high quality life. We like energy because energy is wealth. It gives us clean water if we do it the right way. It gives us productive industry and mobility. That's social mobility. It helps us get richer if we use energy the right way. It also gives us physical mobility. We use gasoline or electricity or diesel to move ourselves around. It gives us comfortable buildings, air conditioning, heating, and abundant food. So we like energy. It's really good for us. And we can even go a step farther and say that energy gives us access to freedom. This is the International Space Station heading east over Southeast Asia. North is to the left and south is to the right. And everywhere there's a light, there's someone who has access to electricity at night. And coming up now is the Korean Peninsula on the right-hand side. South Korea lit up on the right. In the middle is a dark spot is North Korea, except for Pyongyang lit up. In North Korea, they don't have freedom. They don't have access to energy. This goes hand in hand. So I like energy for all these things it gives us. But then we have to be smart and recognize that energy has its downsides as well. That energy done the wrong way gives us concerns about resource depletion or running out of the things we like at the price we like it. We have to worry about environmental degradation, where energy production, use, and trade overcomes the environment's abilities to take up the waste products. We have to worry about national security, where energy trade undermines our foreign policy goals. And unfortunately, all three of those problems amplify each other and relate to each other. So I'd say that energy done the right way is really good for us. Energy done the wrong way is bad for us. So let's be smart about it. And then energy and water are together as important. To sort of drive home this concept, I want to introduce to you a man named Rick Smalley, who was a brilliant thinker, a professor at Rice University, who died about 12 or 13 years ago. He got the Nobel Prize for discovering Buckminster fullerene, or carbon-60. It's a C60 geodesic dome sheet carbon structure that enables materials with novel properties. People know it as the buckyball. And he spent the last few years of his life going around the world giving speeches about society's 10 grand challenges. And he put them in a very particular order, with a logic to it, with energy at the top, followed by water, followed by food, followed by protecting the environment, lifting people out of poverty, terrorism, war, disease, education, democracy, population, in that order. And the idea is that if we solve one, we can solve the next one. If we solve our energy problems, then we can solve our water problems, because we can move water thousands of miles, drill a deeper well, or desalt the ocean, that kind of thing. Once we solve our energy and water problems, we have accessible, reliable, affordable, sustainable energy water, we can grow our food systems. And once we have food, we can worry about protecting the environment. It's hard to protect the environment if you're hungry. And then once you protect the environment, you can lift people out of poverty. If you lift people out of poverty, they don't want to become terrorists. And then so forth. Go down the list. And education is before democracy, for example, because to have a well-functioning democracy, you need a well-educated population. Although I submit to you, we're testing that hypothesis right now as a nation. So there's a whole pattern here. It's hard to get an education if you don't have a light bulb, because you can't study your homework at night, right? So these are all tied in together. Energy and water at the top. I think that's really important. And it's not just that they're number one or number two, but they're also interconnected. So that's what I'm trying to add to this conversation, is that the nexus is particularly important. That we use energy for water, we use water for energy. Now the opportunity is that infinite of one becomes infinite of the other. If you have infinite energy, you can get infinite water. If you have infinite water, you can have infinite energy, because you can grow biofuels in the desert or dam out the rivers, that kind of thing. The bad news is we don't live in a world of infinite. We live in a world of constraints. And so a constraint in one can become a constraint in the other. So that's the challenge for us to manage. The good news is there are some cross-cutting solutions, and I'll get to that. So let me explain how we use water for energy. We use water to drive hydroelectric turbines and dams. We use water to make steam, to drive steam turbines at power plants. We use water to cool that steam at those steam power plants. So we use a lot of water for the power sector. We use water for fuels, to grow biofuels through irrigation, to extract oil and gas with hydraulic fracturing or water flooding, to mine coal and uranium to leach out the minerals, to refine and upgrade fuels by use of steam. And then we use water to transport things with barges and ships. So the energy supply chain has water all up and down it. And this means if water's not available the way you want it, then your whole energy system can come crumbling down. I'll give some examples of that. Going the other way around, we also use energy for water. We use energy for water because the hydrologic cycle, while powerful and global, has plenty of water, but it tends to be in the wrong form, wrong place, or wrong time. Most of it's salty. 97.5% of the world's water is salty. 2.5% is fresh. Of that fresh water, most of it's on top of a mountain far away or deep below ground. So it tends to be far away or wrong form. Or if you live in India, it's in the monsoon. It's available 1 month of the year, but not the other 11 months. And so we use energy to get it to the right form, the right place, at the right time, which is comfortable, heated, treated at our home with the turn of a valve, right? So there's an energy to overcome these limits from nature. I would say that over history, our mythology, our literature has actually captured this idea that water is just out of reach, that we need to bring it within reach. This classic cliche rhyme, water, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink. It captures that idea. We're surrounded by water, but it's just out of reach. This is from the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner by Samuel Taylor Coleridge in 1798. A collection of verses and poems that gave us the idea of the albatross around our neck as well. It also captures the idea that water is just out of reach. The mythical Greek figure Tantalus was punished by the gods by being given eternal thirst and placed in a pond that would recede out of reach as he bent over to get water. So he's thirsty, would bend over to get water, and the water would recede. And so the word tantalize comes from that, which means water just out of reach. So even our language captures the idea that water is right next to us, but we just can't quite get it. And then you're probably familiar with some of the unicorn myths and seen some of the tapestries from the 15th century showing the hunt of the unicorn. What a lot of people don't realize or forget or maybe never knew is that what's magical about the unicorn is its horn, which rids a stream of poison. The horn was magic because it could clean water. Well, I would suggest to you that today we use energy to do the magic of the unicorn's horn and to overcome the power of the Greek gods and to bring that water within reach. We use energy to heat it, treat it, chill it, pressurize it to get us where we want it because of a lifelong need to either move the people to the water or the water to the people. And these days, especially in Southern California, we move the water to the people. There's a lot of energy in that. Well, if you add this all up as a nation, it turns out 13% of our energy consumption as a nation in the United States is into the water and steam systems. We spend an incredible amount of water, energy just getting water to where we want it, how we want it, and in the right form. A third of that, about 4% of our national energy consumption, is in water heating. We spend more energy heating our water as a nation than Switzerland uses for a year for all purposes times 2, which I think is really incredible. We can power 2 countries with just the energy we use in water heating. So these are incredible numbers. In Southern California, it's especially true. This is a busy chart with some small numbers. I'm sorry about the small fonts. It shows the energy intensity for the water and wastewater systems around the nation. This is in kilowatt hours per million gallons. In Austin, Texas, about 5,000 kilowatt hours per million gallons. In the East Coast, it's lower. In New York, it's lower because their water is mostly clean and mostly gravity fed. Most of the energy is for the wastewater treatment system. Look at Southern California or see desalination in LA, 11,000, 13,000, because you have to move water over mountains or desalt the oceans. There's more energy involved here. You're going to hear more about that from the panel. So there's a lot of water in energy. There's a lot of energy in water. The challenge is this introduces a variety of strains. So I want to give you some examples of that. One is with dams. The dams are literally world-changing. They change the environment. That's using water for energy. Dams make the largest power plants in the world. The Three Gorges Dam in China is 22 gigawatts. That's the size of 22 nuclear power plants all in one location. And they built a reservoir of water behind it to operate that dam. That reservoir is as long as England. This is a large body of water. It displaced well over 1 million people, at least 1.3, perhaps 2 million, to build the dam. The Chinese government said, hey, you're going to move. If you can move next year, that'd be great. We're going to build this dam, and it caused hundreds of earthquakes and hundreds of landslides. And it's so heavy, that body of water, it tilted the Earth on its axis. This is literally a world-changing dam. The Earth now rotates 0.06 microseconds more slowly every day. This is incredible. If you are ever late to a meeting ever again, you can blame the dam. It's just like, I couldn't quite get out of bed. This is huge. This is water for energy. And by the way, if you're not careful with that dam, you can cause a zombie outbreak. Have any of you read World War Z? You read World War Z? There's like 4 of you willing to admit it. I appreciate that. Do any of you recognize the name Mel Brooks, the famous actor? Comedian? Yeah. Okay, his son Max Brooks wrote this book, which is kind of funny. He wrote the oral history of the zombie war, which is a great book. There's also a movie out by the same name. Not a good movie, but the book is really good. The movie has nothing to do with the book other than the title, by the way. Brad Pitt does not appear in the book. This book starts in the opening chapter at the Three Gorges Dam. The Three Gorges Dam was built, displaced a lot of people. That's true. In particular, it flooded a city called the City of Ghosts. That is true. The City of Ghosts was built 1,800 years ago as a collection of temples and shrines to the underworld. That is true. And out of this, a little kid in the book went down and stole some artifacts, was bitten by a zombie, and that caused a global pandemic. That part might or might not be true. We don't know at that point where the truth happened. But this idea that hubris, that we could change the world and the world wouldn't fight back, or nature wouldn't fight back in the form of zombies, is I think important. So this is the EnergyWater Nexus coming back, literally to bite you in this case. So there's a challenge there. We also worry about floods. In the power sector, there's a nuclear power plant in Nebraska. In 2011, there's a flood. Everywhere it's gray is water. You're not supposed to have water in power plants, I'm told. I'm just a mechanical engineer, so I'm not an expert on that. But it created an inflatable berm about the size of this lectern, about this height, a few feet tall, around the power plant to keep the water out. And the water rose to the top and went back down. They were within about 1 day of shutting off that power plant from the flood. So floods are a problem. You have too much water. You need water, but if it's there in abundance, is a problem. In Texas, we had Hurricane Harvey, and that created a flood that threatened the fuel sector. A quarter of the nation's refining was flooded and shut in from all the water that fell in the sky. This is really incredible. We had a weird situation where oil prices stayed flat or dropped, but gasoline prices increased. Normally with a hurricane, the oil production gets shut in and oil prices spike. But this was a water event, not a wind event. So oil production kept going, and the refineries shut down. And so we're flooding the markets with oil, and maybe flooding the land with oil too, if we're not careful. And that meant low oil prices and higher fuel prices, and actually fuel shortages in Austin and places like that in Texas. This was a phenomenal event from just too much water. To give you a sense of scale, it was 34 trillion gallons that fell out of the sky. For a city like Austin, about 1 million people in Austin, that's 750 years worth of water fell within a couple of days in one location. It's an incredible amount of water. It's about a year's worth of supply for all, well, several years worth of water for all of Texas, which is really incredible. What if that were money? What if we put a value on water? Well, water in Texas is like $4 per 1,000 gallons untreated, just for fresh water. So that means the total value of the water fell out of the sky is about $136 billion, which did about $136 billion of damage, which I think is Mother Nature being ironic with us, right? It's as if God or Mother Nature said, hey, would you like some money? We're like, yes, give us money. Okay, I'm going to drop a bunch of gold, but it's heavy, you got to catch it. You're trying not to get hit in the head and damage your roots and that kind of thing. That's what happened with water in Texas. And I think it was so impactful, it might be the impetus for rethinking our relationship with cars. This is just one of 3 salvage yards in Texas. We went out there with a drone pilot to get some footage of this. This is just one of 3 salvage yards. All these damaged cars, they don't look damaged because they were flooded, they weren't in collisions, but they're all ruined and they're being taken to different places. Any guesses on how many cars were destroyed in Hurricane Harvey? Anyone willing to say it out loud? 2 million, some said 500,000, but if you add in all the fleet vehicles and trucks, 1 million, the largest incident of automobile destruction in the history of humankind. I think that those 500,000 personal cars and 500,000 fleet trucks and other things should not be replaced one for one. Maybe we replace 500,000 cars with 400,000 cars, and then go to micro-transit or customized transit or something else. There's probably a better way. Houston's got bad traffic. Maybe this is the chance we need to change it. All right, so too much water is a problem, too little water is a problem. Droughts actually threaten the power sector. I wrote an op-ed in the New York Times, July 24, 2012, where I boldly predicted that a drought would cause the next blackout, and a week later to the day, drought caused the next blackout in India, so I felt very smart for predicting that. The funny part behind that story is I've been pitching that op-ed for like 6 years, and they just happened to publish it that week. I give stock tips as well. They'll be right in 6 years as well. The drought triggered the Indian blackout in 2 ways. One is there was less water, so there was less power out of the dams. They have some hydro in India. At the same time, farmers were irrigating their farms because it wasn't raining. Those pumps were electrically driven, so demand was higher for electricity from the drought, and then supply was lower from the hydroelectric reservoirs that were low. And then you add in a couple decades of underinvestment in the grid, a lot of theft and problems with the Indian grid as a whole. The whole thing comes coming down, 620 million people in the dark for a couple of weeks. That's 2 United States' worth of population in the dark. This incredible kind of power been triggered by drought. Well, that kind of problem isn't specific to India, it happens other places. Almost 2 years ago, Venezuela, same kind of problem. Venezuela is getting hammered by low oil and gas prices, all sorts of governance issues. Venezuela is not a happy place right now, but they also get a lot of electricity from hydro, and they have a drought, and it got so bad that the president of Venezuela urged women to stop using hair dryers and offered alternative styling tips as the country's energy crisis continues, saying, I think a woman looks better when she runs her fingers through her hair and lets it dry naturally. I'm trying to imagine the commercial, and then I wondered out loud to myself, do we really want presidents choosing our hairstyles? I mean, it's one thing to line your pockets with money and collude with the Russians, but to tell us how to comb our hair, that's it, we draw the line there. And by the way, this is where, some people laugh at the joke, some people don't. So here's how he looks in Austin with a man bun, if you're wondering, by the way. So, Jason and I are going to dress up like that, right? So hair dryers are a problem. This could lead to people pitchforks in the streets, but so are tea kettles. This is my house last July 2017. The red is my electricity consumption going up and down through the day from the air conditioning. And then the green is my solar power plant on my roof. I got about 5 kilowatts of solar and it's generating during the day with a green arc. And then there's a big spike around 9:15 a.m. And that's my tea kettle, my super fast charging hot tea kettle. I drink hot tea even in the summer apparently, which is a weird kind of phenomenon. But that tea kettle is very consumptive, needs a lot of power. And it turns out if you take a well-organized, polite nation like England, where there's a lot of tea and a lot of tea kettles, and they all plug in the tea kettles at the same time, it's a problem. In fact, this happens. There's a soap opera called The EastEnders on BBC. And when that ends, 1.75 million tea kettles are plugged in at the exact same moment for about 3 to 5 minutes at a few kilowatts a piece. That works out to a 3 gigawatt surge of power for 3 to 5 minutes. This is 3 nuclear power plants on standby in France and some pumped hydro in Wales just to meet that temporary demand. It's like the surge in water flushing down the toilets during the commercials of Super Bowl and that kind of thing. So there's a huge surge, and I think this might be what causes peace between France and England after all those centuries of fighting, is their codependence on nuclear power to enable tea. And by the way, that's the EnergyWater Nexus. That's water to cool the power plant to give you energy into the heat of your water for your tea, right? So that's the EnergyWater Nexus or something like that. Woo, for short, is the acronym. So there's a lot of opportunities here, and there's a lot of challenges, but thankfully there are some social and policy solutions. We can think about source switching energy to fuels that are less water intensive, switching water sources to those that are less energy intensive, and going back and forth, like water lean energy technologies, energy lean water technologies, distributed energy water technologies, smart technologies, Internet of Things, better sensor, integrating these systems so they prop each other up. But there's a lot of ways we can do this.